The wait for Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is finally over, with Insomniac's highly anticipated open-world superhero sequel now having launched worldwide. Millions will obviously be diving into the game's offerings, and with the improvements made to the combat, traversal, side activities, open world, and more, there's obviously quite a bit to get into for all players. So to make your initial hours in New York City as the two Spider-Men a little smoother, here we've compiled a few handy pointers that you should keep in mind while you play the game.
You're not helping! Are you kidding me, Connors?
Webline. If there's one thing you're always guaranteed to find in any Insomniac game, regardless of franchise or genre, it's inventive new gadgets to use in creative ways. And as you'd expect, there's plenty of that to find in Marvel's Spider-Man 2 as well. One of the standout new introductions is the Webline, which takes mobility and freedom of movement in stealth to an entirely new level. In fact, it'd be safe to say it's quite an overpowered tool during stealth sections. Once you get access to the Webline gadget, you'll find that it's all too easy to pop out a few lines running over busy hotspots and areas down below and pick off enemies one by one. Stealth becomes pretty easy to cheese this way, especially since enemies for whatever reason don't seem capable of simply just looking up. Aerial combat. Aerial combat has been an important part of the combat loop in Insomniac's Spider-Man titles since the original 2018 game. But Spider-Man 2 gives you an even wider toolset to enable that. There's more ways than ever to keep your enemies above ground while you're beating them to a pulp, from gadgets to abilities to certain new combos, and you'll find that it's far better to stay aerial during fights than it is to engage against enemies while being grounded. Through skill tree upgrades, you can also increase your focus gains and the damage that you dish out during aerial combat, making it that much more useful. Aerial and mechanical enemies. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 improves upon its predecessors in many ways, combat being among them. And one of the many elements that contribute to its combat improvements is the sheer variety of enemies that you take on throughout the course of the game. Different enemy types demand different strategies, though there are some types in particular that you should ideally be taking out as soon as you spot them. In particular, the aerial enemies and/or your mechanical enemies can also be quite a bit of a nuisance when left unattended, so it's far better to just take them out of the equation as soon as the combat encounter begins, before turning your attention to other enemy types. Chain lightning. Miles doesn't get his hands on Peter's new overpowered symbiote abilities in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, but he does eventually learn new variations of his bioelectricity powers. Mostly, there are different variations of chain lightning, and they are particularly useful when you're fighting against larger groups of enemies, though Miles' venom power, i.e. his original bioelectric powers, are better if you're looking to deal more damage. His chain lightning abilities are much more effective for crowd control, so keep that in mind as you decide which ones that you want to equip. Parrying.
Come and get me! What the hell was that? I don't know! I was just so... in the suit! You okay?
Think so. I'm going to the breaker room.
Parrying is one of several new iterative features that Insomniac has featured in Marvel's Spider-Man 2's combat side of things, and though the bulk of the combat focus is still very much on attacking, dodging, and using gadgets and abilities, parrying does prove to be quite useful from time to time. Rightly timing a parry on an incoming attack can prove quite useful, especially in the particularly hectic combat encounters where you're taking on large groups or tougher foes. While there are usually ways to avoid these attacks, we'd still recommend learning the right timing windows for parrying. Focus upgrades. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 has made a few tweaks to its progression system. For instance, all suit tech upgrades are done through a common tree, with focus, health, damage, and traversal being the 4 categories where you can invest in upgrades. All 4 of them obviously have their uses, but our suggestion would be to prioritize investing in focus upgrades, from new ways to earn focus more quickly to being able to bank multiple finishers to having multiple focus bars and more. There's plenty of key ways investing in focus upgrades can help out. Exploration.
Classes at Hunter High?
Gonna take them to school. The School of Hard Knocks.
Oof, that's bad, Miles.
Sorry.
It was part of my spider training.
At least the blind info paid off.
2018's original Spider-Man game was often guilty of shoving way too many repetitive collectathon-style side activities down players' throats, though Marvel Spider-Man 2 makes plenty of improvements on that front. One of several ways is to improve how optional content is doled out to players is by making it discoverable only through organic exploration, and finding it yourself when you're just swinging around the open world. As such, it's a good idea to ensure that you've visited every area and location in the map at least once. And while you're doing so, make sure to keep your ears and eyes out for any audio or visual cues that could lead you to side activities in the vicinity. Wind tunnels. The web wings are among Marvel Spider-Man 2's biggest and most impressive new improvements, and without a shadow of doubt, you're going to be using them a lot during your playthrough. And while looking for wind tunnels while you're gliding through New York will eventually become second nature to you, in the initial hours it can be a bit easy to forget. Our advice? Anytime you see wind tunnels around you, just hop into the slipstream and see where it takes you, just so that you're getting into the habit of using them as quickly as possible. Some of them also prove to be excellent ways to get to certain optional activities, like underground caches on rooftops or spider bots floating around really high up so that you can only get to them by gliding through the rising gusts of wind. Slingshotting. Plenty of new techniques and tricks have also been introduced in Marvel Spider-Man 2's traversal side of things, and the highlight among all of these additions undoubtedly has to be the slingshot technique, which allows you to use 2 web shots to slingshot yourself forward at significant speed from a stationary position. Scattered throughout the rooftops of New York City, you'll find plenty of super slingshot spots, and though these are obviously excellent for covering large distances, remember that you can use a regular slingshot at any place, at any time. Tricks. Like its predecessors, Marvel Spider-Man 2 lets you pull off and chain together a variety of flashy tricks while you're swinging through the air. And from unlocking a trophy to getting bonus XP, there are some actual advantages to doing that besides it just looking fun. So what's the best way to get the highest possible height so that you can chain together as many tricks as possible? One particular effective method is using the series of rising wind gusts in Manhattan's financial districts, in conjunction with the cluster of skyscrapers around you, to get as high as possible, giving you plenty of room to chain together plenty of tricks before you hit the ground. Hey, did you know that we at Gaming Bolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.